I would gladly exchange my husband for that tall guy, my wife Samantha said, pointing at a young man by the pool. She wasn't whispering, she wanted me to hear it. I pretended not to notice, sipping my whiskey as the ice clinked against the glass. The rooftop lounge of Chicago's Skyline Hotel buzzed with conversation, but somehow her words cut through it all like a knife. Our 10th wedding anniversary celebration? What a joke. My name is Alex Stewart, and until that moment, I thought I knew my wife. Maybe I was just blind. Or stupid. Probably both. Oh, come on, Alex, lighten up. It was just a joke, Sam said, nudging my shoulder when she saw my expression. But it wasn't just a joke. It was another piece of a puzzle I'd been slowly assembling over the past few months. The late nights at work, the sudden passion for fitness, the new wardrobe, the constant texting, and now this, public humiliation. I glanced across the lounge where 3 of Sam's co-workers were watching us, poorly concealing their amusement. They'd heard her comment too. This wasn't just between us. She was performing for an audience. You know what? I'm going to head to the bar, I said, standing up. Looks like Mark's here. Why don't you go say hello? Her eyes lit up at the mention of her new colleague. Really? You don't mind? I forced a smile. Why would I mind? Go have fun. As she walked away, I watched her transformation. The straightening of her posture, the subtle adjustment of her dress, the practiced hair flip. She was a different person approaching him, someone I barely recognized. Mark Wilson, the company's new marketing director. Tall, confident, 10 years younger than me. I'd met him twice at company functions, and both times I caught Sam looking at him with an intensity she hadn't directed at me in years. I moved to the bar and ordered another drink, watching their interaction from a distance. Their body language told me everything I needed to know. The way she touched his arm when she laughed, the way he leaned in close to speak into her ear, the way they created their own bubble in the crowded room. Rough night? The bartender slid my drink across the counter. You could say that, I replied, not taking my eyes off them. Anniversary, right? I overheard when you checked in earlier. 10 years, I confirmed. He nodded towards Sam and Mark. Doesn't look like 10 happy ones. I turned to face him. What would you do if you found out your wife was cheating? He wiped the counter thoughtfully. Depends. My first marriage ended that way. I made a scene, broke some stuff, said things I regret. Didn't change anything except making me look like the bad guy. He leaned closer. Second time around, I was smarter. Gathered evidence, protected my assets, planned my exit. Less satisfying in the moment, but much better in the long run. I nodded, considering his words. Thanks for the advice. Just an observation from someone who's been there, he said, moving away to serve another customer. I looked back at Sam and Mark. They were now sitting at a table, heads close together, laughing at some private joke. Something cold and hard formed in my chest. This wasn't going to be a dramatic confrontation or a tearful plea for our marriage. No, this would require planning, patience, and precision. I was about to leave when I noticed one of Sam's coworkers, Jennifer, I think, approaching me. She had always been friendly, one of the few who actually seemed to like me at company functions. Hey, Alex, she said, sliding onto the bar stool next to me. Mind if I join you? Not at all, I replied, signaling the bartender for another round. I'm sorry about, she nodded discreetly towards Sam and Mark. It's been happening for a while. Some of us thought you should know, but nobody wanted to be the messenger. My stomach tightened. How long is a while? Jennifer hesitated. At least 3 months that I know of. Office Christmas party was when it started getting obvious. 3 months? Christmas. I'd been home with the flu, unable to attend. That explained the sudden shift in our relationship afterward. The increased distance, the criticisms, the constant comparisons to her more successful colleagues. Thanks for telling me, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I appreciate the honesty. She looked relieved. Most of us think you deserve better, Alex. Sam's been different lately, not in a good way. She glanced over her shoulder. I should get back before she notices. Take care of yourself, okay? As Jennifer walked away, I felt a strange mixture of humiliation and gratitude. At least now I knew it wasn't all in my head. Other people had seen it too. I finished my drink and walked toward the exit. As I passed their table, I heard Mark ask, "Is your husband leaving?" Sam glanced up, mild surprise on her face. "Alex, are you going?" "Just back to the room. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Don't rush back on my account." "Oh." She looked almost relieved. "I might stay a while longer then." "Take your time," I said, giving them both a cordial nod before walking away. The last thing I heard as I left was Mark's low voice. "He really doesn't suspect anything, does he?" Followed by Sam's dismissive laugh. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. I barely recognized myself, the slumped shoulders, the defeated expression, the extra weight around my middle that I'd been ignoring. When had I become this person? This doormat? I straightened my spine, adjusting my posture. A small change, but symbolic. Tonight was the last night I would allow myself to be played for a fool. Back in our suite, I poured another drink and sat by the window overlooking the Chicago skyline. The city lights blurred as I lost myself in thought. I needed to know the truth. All of it, and then I needed a plan. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Thought you might want to see this." Attached was a photo taken moments ago. Sam and Mark in a corner of the bar, locked in a passionate kiss. No pretense, no discretion. "Thanks," I replied. "Keep this between us?" "Of course," she answered. "And if you need anything else, just ask. Some of us have your back." I saved the photo to a secure folder, then pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Within minutes, I transferred half of our joint savings into my personal account. It wasn't much. We'd been living beyond our means for years, but it was a start. Then I called my old college roommate, Jason, now a private investigator. "Alex, it's been ages. How are you?" "Not great, Jason. I need your help." I explained the situation as concisely as I could. He listened without interruption. "I can help," he said finally. "But are you sure you want to go down this road? Once you start digging, you can't unknow what you find." "I'm sure," I replied without hesitation. "All right, I'll need access to her phone and computer if possible, and a retainer. You'll have both tomorrow." After hanging up, I made another call to my lawyer, setting up an appointment for the following week. Then I opened my laptop and started documenting everything I could remember. Dates, eBay, suspicious behaviors, financial discrepancies. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. Around midnight, my phone rang. It was Sam. "Hey," she said, her voice artificially bright. "Just checking in. You okay?" "Fine," I replied. "Just finishing some work. Having a good time?" "It's okay. Company stuff, you know how it is." A pause. "I might be a little late. The team wants to hit this jazz club downtown." "No problem. Enjoy yourself." My tone was perfectly neutral, giving away nothing. "You're not upset?" "Why would I be upset about you enjoying our anniversary trip?" I asked mildly. "Have fun, Sam." She hesitated, perhaps thrown by my lack of protest. "Okay then, don't wait up." "I won't." After hanging up, I continued my preparations. I made a list of our financial accounts, noting which ones were joint and which were in my name only. I downloaded our credit reports, searched for hidden accounts or loans. I even checked our safe deposit box records, looking for anything unusual. By 1 a.m., I'd made significant progress. I had a clearer picture of our financial situation and had secured copies of our most important documents. I'd also contacted a few trusted friends, subtly laying the groundwork for the support system I'd need in the coming weeks. I was about to call it a night when my phone buzzed again. Another text from Jennifer. "They just left together, thought you should know." I thanked her and poured myself one last drink. The ice had long since melted, diluting the whiskey. Somehow it felt fitting. Everything in my life lately had felt watered down, diminished. By the time Sam stumbled into our room at 2:30 a.m., I was in bed with the lights off, pretending to be asleep. She didn't check. She didn't even try to be quiet as she bumped into furniture and giggled to herself. I lay still, listening to her fumble in the bathroom, the sound of running water, the clatter of makeup being dumped onto the counter. Through barely open eyes, I watched her check her phone, smiling at a message that had just come in. She typed a quick reply, then deleted the conversation entirely before plugging in her phone to charge. I thought I would feel rage. Instead, I felt a strange calm, like a switch had been flipped inside me. The Alex who would have confronted her, who would have begged for explanations or reassurances, was gone. In his place was someone colder, more calculating, someone who would not be made a fool of again. Sam slipped into bed, smelling of alcohol and unfamiliar cologne. She turned away from me, not even attempting to touch me. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that our marriage was over. All that remained was to end it on my terms. The next morning, I was up early, showered and dressed before Sam even stirred. I left a note saying I'd gone to my meeting and would see her back in Boston. Then I checked out of the hotel and caught the first flight home, leaving her to wake up alone. On the plane, I made a list of everything I needed to do. First, secure our financial situation. Second, gather evidence. Third, prepare for independence. Fourth, confront and conclude. I remembered how Sam and I had met 11 years ago, both ambitious young professionals in Boston's competitive marketing scene. I was the strategist, she was the creative talent. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. The early years had been good. We pushed each other, celebrated each other's successes, planned a future together. But somewhere along the way, something had changed. Sam's ambition had turned to dissatisfaction. No achievement was ever enough. No lifestyle upgrade satisfied her for long. When had she started seeing me as the thing holding her back rather than her partner? When had I become an obstacle rather than a teammate? By the time we landed, I had a clear roadmap for the weeks ahead. As I walked through Logan Airport, I felt a strange lightness. The weight of uncertainty was gone. Now there was only the plan. I took a cab directly to my lawyer's office, calling on the way to see if she could fit me in earlier than our scheduled appointment. Fortunately, she had a cancellation. "This is unexpected," Barbara Chen said as I settled into the chair across from her desk. "Your message mentioned divorce proceedings, but I thought we weren't meeting until next week." "Things have accelerated," I explained, then laid out what I knew so far. Barbara listened carefully, taking notes and occasionally asking for clarification. "You've done well to secure those initial financial protections," she said when I finished. "But we need to move quickly on the rest. If your wife has been diverting funds, there could be more you haven't discovered yet." We spent the next hour outlining a strategy, what documents I needed to obtain, what evidence would be most valuable, what legal protections I could put in place immediately. "What about the house?" I asked. "Our brownstone in Back Bay was our most valuable asset, purchased primarily with money from my inheritance. We'll file a petition to establish it as separate property based on the inheritance funding," Barbara said. "But start documenting everything now. Original purchase, renovations, mortgage payments. The more evidence we have that this was your family money, the better." By the time I left Barbara's office, I had a detailed action plan and a renewed sense of purpose. This wouldn't just be about ending my marriage. It would be about reclaiming my life. Back at our brownstone in Back Bay, I went straight to our home office. Sam had always been careless with passwords, using the same few combinations for everything. Within minutes, I had access to her email, social media, and cloud storage. What I found confirmed my worst suspicions and revealed things I hadn't even considered. There were hundreds of messages between her and Mark, dating back 6 months, not 3 as Jennifer had thought. Photos, videos, plans for their Chicago rendezvous. But there was more. Financial records showing withdrawals from our joint account that I couldn't account for. A secret credit card I knew nothing about with charges for hotels, restaurants, and lingerie I'd never seen. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Sam had been systematically siphoning money from our accounts for over a year, building a nest egg I knew nothing about. She'd even taken out a home equity line of credit against our house, my house, without my knowledge, using forged signatures on the paperwork. But perhaps most disturbing were the messages between Sam and her friends about me. The mockery, the contempt, the detailed plans for how she would upgrade once she'd extracted maximum financial benefit from our divorce. "Alex is such a pushover," she'd written to her friend Diane. "He won't even fight for himself, let alone fight me in court. I almost feel bad for how easy this is going to be." I documented everything methodically, saving copies to an encrypted drive. Then I went through our home, taking photos of all our valuable possessions and gathering important documents. Marriage certificate, property deeds, investment portfolios. As I worked, I discovered other betrayals. A weekend trip Sam had taken to visit her sister in Miami had actually been a getaway with Mark. The expensive watch I'd received for Christmas, supposedly purchased with her bonus, had been charged to our joint credit card. Even our anniversary trip to Chicago had been partially funded by the company under false pretenses. By evening, I'd moved essential items to a storage unit and contacted a real estate agent about rental properties. When Sam finally called around 6 p.m., I was prepared. "Where did you go?" she demanded, skipping any greeting. "I had an early meeting, like I told you. I'm back home now." "You could have waited for me. You seem to be enjoying yourself. I didn't want to interrupt." A pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, Sam. How was your night?" "Fine, normal. We just had a few drinks with the team." The lie came so easily to her, I wondered how many times before I had blindly accepted similar falsehoods. "That's nice. When are you coming home?" "I'm at the airport now. My flight lands at 9. "I'll pick you up." "You don't have to." "I want to," I insisted, keeping my voice neutral. "It's no trouble." Another pause. "Okay, thanks." I hung up and continued preparing. I needed to play the role of unsuspecting husband a little longer, just until everything was in place. I called Jason to update him on what I'd found. "This is better than I expected," he said. "With this much documentation, we may not need to do much additional surveillance." "Keep digging anyway," I told him. "I want to be thorough." "Will do. And Alex, take care of yourself during all this. I've seen this kind of thing destroy people." "I'll be fine," I assured him, though I wasn't entirely sure it was true. At the airport, I waited at arrivals, scanning the crowd for my wife. When she appeared, pulling her carry-on, I noticed how she checked her reflection in a window before approaching me. The performance was beginning. "Hey," she said, offering her cheek for a kiss. I obliged, noting the stiffness in her posture. "Good flight?" "Fine, I'm exhausted though." "Let's get you home then." In the car, she kept the conversation superficial. Complaints about the flight, comments about Chicago, gossip about colleagues. I responded appropriately while mentally cataloging each new lie. "How was your meeting?" she eventually asked. "Productive," I replied truthfully. My meeting with Barbara had been very productive indeed. At home, she went straight to the shower. I used the opportunity to clone her phone using software Jason had provided. By morning, I would have access to all her messages, calls, and location data. While the cloning software was running, I noticed a new text coming in from Mark. "Miss you already? When can we meet again?" Sam's reply, typed while supposedly in the shower. "Soon. He doesn't suspect a thing. Going to start moving more money this week." I took screenshots, then finished the cloning process just as the shower turned off. By the time Sam emerged wrapped in a towel, I was casually checking sports scores on my laptop, the perfect picture of an oblivious husband. "I'm absolutely beat," she announced, crawling into bed without bothering to dry her hair. "Mind if we just go to sleep?" "Of course not," I said. "Get some rest." She was asleep within minutes, while I lay awake beside her, mentally reviewing my plan. Tomorrow I would begin the next phase, preparing myself for independence while continuing to gather evidence. The next few weeks followed a pattern. Sam would leave early for work and return late, often smelling of alcohol and cologne. I would play the role of distracted husband, too busy with my own work to notice her absences. Meanwhile, I was methodically building my case and preparing for independence. I joined a gym and started working out daily. I met with a financial advisor to discuss investment strategies. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. I even started therapy, something Sam had suggested years ago that I'd resisted. The physical changes came surprisingly quickly. Within a month, I'd lost 15 pounds and gained noticeable muscle definition. My posture improved. My confidence grew. I bought new clothes that actually fit, replacing the baggy, outdated wardrobe Sam had always criticized. At work, I refocused on my career, putting in for a promotion I'd been hesitant to pursue before. To my surprise, I got it, along with a substantial raise. When I mentioned it casually to Sam over dinner, she seemed genuinely shocked. "That's great," she said, clearly struggling to sound enthusiastic. "I didn't even know you were up for a promotion." "There's a lot you don't know about me these days," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Meanwhile, the evidence continued to mount. Sam and Mark's affair was in full swing, with meetings at hotels, late-night office trysts, and weekend work trips. There were also hints of other men, though nothing as conclusive. The financial discoveries were equally disturbing. Sam had been siphoning money from our accounts for years, building a secret nest egg I knew nothing about. She'd also been running up debt in my name, leveraging my good credit score for her own benefit. Jason's investigation uncovered a separate apartment Sam had rented 6 months earlier, a small studio in a neighborhood across town, paid for with cash withdrawn from our joint account. Surveillance photos showed her there with Mark multiple times, but also with another man Jason identified as Brian Taylor, a client from her firm. "She's been busy," Jason commented dryly as he showed me the photos. "Want me to look into this Brian guy too?" "Yes," I said. "I want the complete picture." The Brian angle proved particularly interesting. He was married with 3 young children and a prominent position at a Fortune 500 company. His wife was a well-known philanthropist from a wealthy Boston family. The potential scandal would be devastating, professionally and personally. 6 weeks after Chicago, I was ready. I had secured an apartment, separated our finances as much as possible without raising suspicion, and compiled a comprehensive dossier of her infidelity and financial misconduct. The physical changes in me were already noticeable. 15 pounds lighter, with emerging muscle definition. My clothes fitting better, my posture straighter, my confidence growing highly. Several colleagues had commented on the transformation, though Sam barely seemed to notice. The opportunity came when Sam announced another work trip to New York. I knew from her messages with Mark that they were planning a romantic weekend at the Plaza, charged to my credit card. "Actually," I said when she told me, "I was thinking of joining you in New York. We could make a weekend of it." The panic that flashed across her face was almost comical. "Oh, I don't think that would work. It's going to be all meetings and working dinners." "That's fine. I can entertain myself during the day. We could at least have breakfast together, maybe one nice dinner." "Alex, I really need to focus on this project another time, okay?" I shrugged, feigning disappointment. "If you're sure, it just feels like we've been ships passing lately." She softened slightly, perhaps feeling guilty or just wanting to manage me. "I know. Things have been crazy. Let's plan something special when this project is over. Just the two of us." "I'd like that," I lied. After she left for work, I made a few final preparations. First, I called Jennifer at Sam's office. "I need a favor," I explained. "Something discreet." "Name it," she said without hesitation. "I need copies of Sam's expense reports for the last 6 months, and any documentation about this weekend's business trip to New York." "Give me an hour," she promised. True to her word, Jennifer sent over the files before lunch. They confirmed what I already knew. Sam had been falsifying expense reports, charging personal items, and rendezvous with Mark to the company account. The New York trip was particularly egregious, with a fake client meeting listed as the purpose and a budget approved for a standard business hotel, not the Plaza. Next, I contacted Brian Taylor's wife, requesting a confidential meeting. We met at a quiet cafe across town. "I apologize for the mysterious invitation," I said as she sat down across from me. "But I have information I think you should be aware of." Elizabeth Taylor was a poised, elegant woman in her early 40s. "This sounds serious," she said, studying me carefully. "It is. It concerns your husband and my wife." I showed her selected photos and messages, enough to make the situation clear without being unnecessarily graphic or humiliating. She examined them in silence, her expression unchanging. When she finally looked up, her eyes were cold with controlled fury. "How long have you known?" "About Brian specifically? Just a few weeks. About my wife's activities in general?" "Longer." "What do you want from me?" she asked directly. "Nothing but awareness," I replied honestly. "What you do with this information is entirely your decision. I just thought you deserved to know." She nodded slowly. "I appreciate that. May I keep these?" "Of course." As we prepared to leave, she asked, "What are you planning to do about your wife?" "I'm handling it," I said simply. "Good. They deserve what's coming." She gathered her belongings with meticulous precision. Well, Mr. Stewart, I suspect both our spouses are about to experience some significant life changes. Good luck with yours. And to you, I replied, recognizing a formidable woman when I saw one. The weekend of Sam's trip arrived. I tracked her phone as she and Mark checked into the plaza under his name, but using my credit card, I had already alerted the hotel to the potential fraud, ensuring they would request ID matching the card at check-in. The resulting confusion would be just the beginning. While they were settling in, I sat back and watched events unfold. I hadn't needed to take further action. Others were already setting consequences in motion. The call came Saturday morning. Sam, her voice tight with controlled fury. Did you cancel our credit cards? Good morning to you too, I replied calmly. And no, I didn't cancel anything. What's happened? The hotel just called. They said there's a problem with the card I used to book the room, and my cards aren't working either. That's strange. Mine are working fine. I used one an hour ago for coffee. Well, something's wrong and I need you to fix it. I'm happy to call the bank, but they're probably closed until Monday. Where are you staying? Maybe I can wire you some cash. A pause. I'm at the plaza. The plaza? I thought the company put you up at the Marriott for these trips. Another longer pause. There was a change of plans. I see. Well, how much do you need to get through the weekend? The room is $700 a night plus incidentals. I whistled. That's quite a budget for a business trip. Is the company reimbursing all that? Alex, can you help me or not? Her patience was wearing thin. Of course. Let me see what I can do. I'll call you back. I hung up and waited, smiling to myself. Phase 1 was complete. Sam was now thoroughly distracted by the immediate financial crisis. Phase 2 would begin shortly. As expected, my phone rang 20 minutes later. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Is this Alex Stewart? A man's voice, tense and formal. Speaking. This is Richard Davis, VP of Human Resources at Meridian Marketing. Sam's company. We need to discuss an urgent matter regarding your wife, Samantha Stewart. Is everything okay? No, Mr. Stewart, it is not. We've received some concerning information about potential misconduct involving your wife and another employee. We're conducting an internal investigation, but I wanted to speak with you directly. I see, I said, feigning surprise. What kind of misconduct? I'd rather not discuss specifics over the phone. Would you be available to meet on Monday morning? Absolutely. What time works for you? We arranged a meeting for 9 a.m. Monday. Shortly after, Sam called again. The hotel worked it out, she said, sounding relieved. False alarm. That's good. Having a nice time? It's fine. Busy. Listen, I might stay an extra day. The meetings are running longer than expected. Whatever you need, I said agreeably. By the way, someone from your HR department called. Richard something. Wanted to set up a meeting on Monday. The silence on the other end was deafening. Sam, you there? What did he want? Her voice had dropped to a whisper. He didn't say exactly. Something about an internal investigation. Sounded pretty serious. Did he mention anyone else? No, just you. Is everything okay at work? I have to go, she said abruptly. I'll call you back. She didn't call back. Instead, she and Mark checked out of the plaza within the hour and took separate flights back to Boston. I tracked their panicked text exchanges with amusement. They were scrambling, pointing fingers, trying to figure out how they'd been caught and what to do next. What they didn't know was that a similar scene was playing out across town. Elizabeth Taylor had confronted Brian, resulting in a hasty departure from their home and a flurry of calls to lawyers. By evening, the story had already reached some of Boston's more elite social circles, though the details were still murky. Meanwhile, I received an unexpected call from Jessica Wilson, Mark's wife. Is this Alex Stewart? Speaking. My name is Jessica Wilson. I believe our spouses have been involved. I believe you're right, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I received some photographs today. Anonymous delivery. Her voice was steady but tight with emotion. I thought perhaps you sent them. No, but I'm not surprised someone did. There seems to be a lot of evidence circulating. I see. A pause, What are you planning to do? End my marriage, I said simply. And you? The same, I expect, though I'm also planning to ensure Mark's employer knows exactly what kind of person they promoted. I smiled. Another player had entered the game, one I hadn't anticipated, but who fit perfectly into the unfolding scenario. By Sunday evening, Sam was home, looking haggard and tense. She busied herself with laundry and meal prep, studiously avoiding conversation. I maintained my oblivious facade, asking innocent questions about New York and commenting on how tired she looked. "Big day tomorrow," I said as we prepared for bed. "You're meeting with HR and all." She froze. "You didn't mention that meeting to anyone, did you?" "No, should I have?" No, it's a sensitive company matter. Confidential." "Ah, I understand. Well, I'm sure it'll be fine. You're their star performer, after all." She didn't reply, just turned away and pretended to sleep. I lay awake beside her, counting down the hours. Monday morning arrived. Sam was up and out early, presumably to coordinate with Mark before the HR meeting. I waited until she'd left, then made my way to Meridian Marketing's downtown offices. The receptionist directed me to a conference room where Richard Davis was waiting, along with a woman I recognized as the company's legal counsel. "Mr. Stewart, thank you for coming," Richard said, shaking my hand. "This is Patricia Miller, our chief legal officer. Please call me Alex, and it's no problem. I'm concerned about whatever's going on." They exchanged glances. "We've asked your wife and Mark Wilson to join us at 9:30, Patricia explained. "Before they arrive, we wanted to clarify a few things with you." "Of course. The information we received suggests that your wife and Mr. Wilson have been engaged in an inappropriate relationship while falsifying expense reports and misusing company resources. Were you aware of any of this?" I adopted an expression of shock. "No, I had no idea. Sam told me she was on business trips. Are you saying they weren't?" "Some were legitimate, many were not," Richard confirmed. "The evidence is quite comprehensive." "I don't understand," I said, allowing confusion to color my voice. "What kind of evidence?" Patricia slid a folder across the table. "Hotel receipts, text messages, emails, photos, all pointing to a months-long affair conducted largely on company time and using company resources." I flipped through the folder, pretending to be seeing it all for the first time. I don't know what to say." "We understand this must be difficult," Richard said sympathetically. "But we need to know. Did you send this information to us?" I looked up, the picture of innocence. "Me? No, I had no idea about any of this until you called me." They studied me, looking for signs of deception. Finding none, Patricia continued. "Well, someone did." The package was quite thorough. "I can imagine this is a serious matter for the company," I offered. "Very serious," Richard confirmed. "Meridian has strict policies about workplace relationships, especially between managers and their direct reports. The financial misconduct alone would be grounds for termination." A knock at the door interrupted us. Richard checked his watch. "That will be your wife and Mr. Wilson. Are you comfortable staying for this meeting? You're under no obligation." "I think I should," I said firmly. "I need to hear what they have to say." Richard nodded and called for them to enter. Sam walked in first, freezing when she saw me. Mark followed, looking equally shocked. "What is he doing here?" Sam demanded, pointing at me. "I invited him," Richard said calmly. "Please, both of you, sit down." They reluctantly took seats across from me. Sam was vibrating with tension, while Mark looked like he might be sick. "Miss Stewart, Mr. Wilson, we've asked you here today to discuss some very serious allegations of misconduct," Patricia began. "What allegations?" Sam asked. Her voice steadied despite her obvious distress. In answer, Patricia pushed copies of the folder toward them. "We have evidence that the two of you have been engaged in an undisclosed relationship while falsifying company records and misappropriating funds." Sam glanced at the folder but didn't open it. "That's ridiculous. Who made these accusations?" "The source is anonymous," Richard said, "but the evidence speaks for itself." Mark finally spoke, his voice strained. "This is a misunderstanding. Samantha and I have been working closely on the West Ridge account. That's all." "At the Plaza Hotel?" I asked innocently. "This weekend?" Sam's head snapped toward me, her eyes narrowing. "You knew." "I suspected," I corrected. "I confirmed it when you called about the credit card." "You canceled our cards deliberately." she accused. I didn't cancel anything. I just put a fraud alert on mine since I wasn't the one using it. Richard cleared his throat. If we could return to the matter at hand, these expenses, he tapped the folder, were submitted as business costs, dinners, hotel rooms, travel, all while you two were conducting a personal relationship that violates company policy. We can explain, Sam began, but Patricia cut her off. Ms. Stewart, Mr. Wilson, I need to inform you that your employment with Meridian Marketing is being terminated, effective immediately. The evidence of financial misconduct is irrefutable. You can't do this, Sam protested. I've been with this company for 8 years. I've brought in millions in accounts. And we appreciate your past contributions, Richard said firmly. But these actions leave us no choice. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. Your company devices and access cards must be surrendered now. Mark slumped in his chair, defeated. Sam, however, was just warming up. This is all you're doing, isn't it? She hissed at me. You set us up. I met her gaze calmly. I didn't make you have an affair, Sam. I didn't force you to charge your romantic getaways to the company card or lie about where you were going. Those were your choices. You had no right to interfere with my career. I didn't, I replied truthfully. But actions have consequences. You built this house of cards. I just happened to be present when it collapsed. Mr. Stewart, Patricia interjected, while we appreciate your cooperation, this is now an internal matter. Would you mind waiting outside while we conclude this meeting? Of course, I stood, buttoning my jacket. I'll be in the lobby. As I walked toward the door, Sam called after me. This isn't over, Alex. I turned back with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Actually, Sam, it is. I'll see you at home. We have a lot to discuss. The next hour passed slowly as I waited in the lobby. Eventually, I saw Mark being escorted out by security, a box of personal items in his arms. His face was ashen, his confident demeanor completely shattered. He didn't look in my direction. 10 minutes later, Sam emerged, similarly accompanied. Unlike Mark, she marched straight toward me. You've destroyed my career, she said through clenched teeth. No, you did that all by yourself, I replied, standing. Shall we continue this conversation at home? I'm not going anywhere with you. That's your choice, but I think you'll want to hear what I have to say before you make any decisions. Something in my tone must have reached her because she nodded curtly. Fine, let's get this over with. We rode in silence back to our brownstone. Once inside, Sam immediately poured herself a large glass of wine, draining half of it in one gulp before refilling it. Go ahead, she said, gesturing expansively. Tell me how you orchestrated all this. Get it off your chest. I didn't orchestrate anything. I simply stopped looking the other way. I loosened my tie and sat down across from her. I know about the affair with Mark. I know about Brian Taylor. I know about the others before them. I know about the money you've been taking from our accounts and the credit card debt you've been hiding. Her face paled with each revelation, but she quickly recovered. You're being dramatic. Yes, Mark and I got carried away. It was stupid and reckless, but it wasn't serious. Brian was just a client I got too friendly with. As for the money, I've been putting it aside for us, for our future. Sam, please, don't insult my intelligence. I pulled out my phone, opened an app, and placed it on the table between us. This is a recording of you and Mark from 2 weeks ago, discussing your plans to leave me once his divorce was finalized. Her eyes widened as her own voice filled the room. Once you're free of Jessica and I've secured my share from Alex, we can finally be together properly. Another month, maybe 2. Mark's reply, are you sure you can get what you want in the divorce? He might not make it easy. Her laugh, cold and confident. Alex? He's clueless. Besides, I've been moving assets for months. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. I stopped the recording. Sam's face had drained of all color. That's illegal, she whispered. You can't record people without their consent. In Massachusetts, only one party needs to consent to a recording. And since it was made in our home, where I have a reasonable expectation of privacy, it's perfectly admissible. Admissible? Are you planning to sue me? I'm planning to divorce you, I corrected. And yes, I'll be using this and other evidence to ensure an equitable division of assets, after accounting for what you've already taken, of course. She sank into a chair, the fight suddenly gone from her. How long have you known? Suspected? For months. Known for certain? Since Chicago, when you said you'd gladly exchange me for that tall guy by the pool. It wasn't just Mark you were talking about. It was the idea of any man who wasn't me. She didn't deny it. What happens now? Now I lay out your options. I pulled a folder from my briefcase, similar to the one at the HR meeting but much thicker. Option 1. We fight this out in court. I have documentation of your affairs, your financial misconduct, even your plans to defraud me in divorce proceedings. It would get ugly, expensive, and public. And option 2, she asked quietly, we handle this privately through mediation. You return the money you've taken, we sell the house and split the proceeds fairly, and we both move on with our lives. No public accusations, no dragging each other through the mud. She studied me, perhaps seeing me clearly for the first time in years. You've changed. I've woken up, I corrected. The man you could manipulate and deceive is gone. She sipped her wine, considering. What about my job? Can you fix that? I laughed, genuinely amused. No, Sam, that bridge is well and truly burned. But I didn't send that package to HR, if that's what you're thinking. If you didn't, who did? My guess? Jessica Wilson or Elizabeth Taylor. I'm not the only one who's been gathering evidence. Sam blanched. Elizabeth knows about Brian? Oh yes, we had a very enlightening conversation last week. You went to her? Sam's voice rose an octave. Do you have any idea what her family can do? The connections they have in this town? I didn't go to her with malicious intent. I simply shared information I thought she deserved to know, much as someone shared information with Meridian about your professional misconduct. Sam stood abruptly, pacing the room. This is a nightmare. My career is over. My reputation. Actions have consequences, Sam. You made your choices. She whirled on me. Don't you dare lecture me. You were never enough, never ambitious enough, never exciting enough, never man enough. And yet here we are, I replied calmly. Me with options and a future. You with neither. She lunged forward suddenly, hand raised to strike me. I caught her wrist easily, holding it firmly but not painfully. Don't, I said quietly. That won't help your situation. For a moment we stayed frozen in that tableau. Her arm raised, my hand restraining it, our eyes locked in silent battle. Then she collapsed back into her chair, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I hate you, she whispered. No, you don't, I replied. You hate that I'm not who you thought I was. You hate that I wasn't the pushover you counted on. Most of all, you hate that you miscalculated so badly. I stood up. You have until tomorrow to decide which option you prefer. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. You're leaving me here alone? You've been alone in this marriage for a long time, Sam. One more night won't make a difference. I packed an overnight bag while she sat in stunned silence. At the door, I paused. For what it's worth, I did love you, completely and honestly. Alex, she seemed about to say more, then shook her head. Never mind. Go. I spent the night at the apartment I'd already leased, sleeping better than I had in months. The next morning, I received a text from Sam. Option 2, I'll call a mediator today. The divorce proceeded with surprising efficiency. Sam, perhaps realizing how thoroughly outmaneuvered she was, cooperated fully. She returned most of the money she'd diverted, agreed to a fair division of our remaining assets, and signed the papers without argument. One unexpected complication arose when Sam's parents intervened. They'd always treated me like I wasn't good enough for their daughter, and now they were convinced I was somehow taking advantage of her. You have no right to the house, her father blustered during a tense meeting with our mediator. That neighborhood was way above your pay grade before you married Sam. Actually, Mr. Porter, our mediator interjected, the house was purchased primarily with Mr. Stewart's inheritance. The documentation is quite clear. He must have forced her to sign these agreements, her mother insisted. Sam would never agree to these terms otherwise. Sam surprised me by speaking up. No, Mom, Alex is being more than fair. I made mistakes, serious ones. This is the right way forward. Her parents left in a huff, and Sam stayed behind briefly. I'm sorry about that, she said quietly. They always believed I could do no wrong. It's fine, I replied. It doesn't matter anymore. She studied me for a moment. You really have changed. You seem stronger. I am. I should have appreciated what we had, she said, a hint of genuine regret in her voice. Yes, you should have. I gathered my papers. Take care, Sam. It was the last meaningful conversation we had. The house sold quickly, giving us each a decent sum to start over with. I heard through mutual friends that Sam had moved to Chicago, ironically enough. Mark, I later learned, had reconciled with his wife after a stint in couples therapy. Brian Taylor hadn't fared as well. His wife's family connections ensured he lost not only his marriage, but also his executive position. The last I heard, he'd relocated to Seattle to rebuild his career far from the Boston social circles that had blacklisted him. As for me, I used my share of the house proceeds to invest in a small tech startup that had approached me for consulting work. 6 months later, they offered me a full-time position as CFO with equity. I accepted and relocated to their headquarters in New York. My new apartment in Brooklyn wasn't as luxurious as our Boston brownstone, but it was mine, free from lies and betrayal. I continued with therapy, worked out regularly, and slowly rebuilt my social life. Jennifer and I stayed in touch. She'd left Meridian shortly after Sam's departure, accepting a better position at a competing agency. When she visited New York for a conference, we met for dinner. You look great, she said, studying me across the table. Happier. I am, I admitted. It's been a long journey, but a necessary one. No regrets? I considered the question seriously. About ending the marriage? None. About not seeing the truth sooner? Maybe a few, but I've made peace with it. She smiled. Good, you deserve that peace. What about you? Any regrets about getting involved? Not one, she said firmly. Some people deserve to face consequences. Our dinner extended into drinks and then a walk along the Brooklyn waterfront. By the end of the evening, there was a tentative promise of something more than friendship. We agreed to take it slowly, both of us carrying baggage from the past. I even started dating again, cautiously. Nothing serious at first, just dinner, conversation, the gradual rediscovery of what it meant to connect with someone, honestly. It was refreshing to interact with women who didn't see me as a stepping stone or a meal ticket. A year after the divorce was finalized, I received an email from Sam. It was brief. I saw your company in the business news. Congratulations on the funding round. You deserve the success. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I considered not responding, but eventually wrote back. Thank you. I hope you're finding your way too. Her reply came the same day. Still working on it. Turns out the grass isn't always greener. Be well, Alex. I didn't write back. There was nothing more to say. That night, I stood on my balcony overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge, reflecting on how much had changed in 18 months. The man whose wife had casually suggested trading him in for a newer model was gone. In his place stood someone stronger, wiser, and genuinely content. My relationship with Jennifer was evolving slowly but promisingly. We were taking our time, both wary of repeating past mistakes, but the foundation was solid. Honesty, respect, shared values. She understood what I'd been through because she'd witnessed it firsthand. There was a comfort in that shared history. As I sipped my whiskey and watched the city lights shimmer across the water, I thought about the woman by the pool in Chicago and her casual cruelty. I would gladly exchange my husband for that tall guy. Those words had shattered my world, but from that destruction had emerged something better, stronger, more authentic. I raised my glass in a silent toast, not to Sam's downfall or my own success, but to the unexpected journey that had led me here, to the power of hitting rock bottom and discovering that it's actually solid ground on which to rebuild. Some might call it an epic revenge. I prefer to think of it as an epic reclamation.